and the meeting itself, just to, really just for the record, just easier to get the minute done for that purpose primarily. So that's helpful. That's good. Okay, so as I say, the context for today is that we were going to take a little bit of time just before the formal meeting starts, just to run through a bit of an induction again for new members and for us as a group. Not too heavy, he says, just putting the pressure on Kate. It is just a 20 minutes worth, 15-20 minutes worth of just about a reminder about what we are and how we work, and thereafter we'll run through into the board meeting itself. And again, just to set the scene, I'll be aware that with the previous chair, Councillor Kill, I just stepped down from the council at the last election, so we do need to elect and appoint a new chair and vice chair. So that'll be the first item of our proper business when we come together after the induction slot. So I'll manage that initial bit, and then once that bit's done, then the new chair will take over the rest of the meeting from that point onwards, and you'll see then a more familiar just set of arrangements in terms of how we deal with the rest of the agenda. So if that sounds okay, folks, I'll just pass over to Kate just to take us through some of the headlines around the induction for the CPP board, and we'll take it from there. Thanks, Kate.
Richie, thank you. Can I just check, can everyone see the slides? Yeah, okay, right. So as Richie said, we just felt it was an opportunity. We've got a number of changes of membership. We thought it was useful just to add a brief session at the start of today's agenda to refresh everyone's understanding of sorry, can I just check? I can hear feedback. I think people have got their mics on. If I can just ask everyone to mute, that would be really helpful. Thank you. So it's an opportunity for us just to remind everyone around where we're at, what the roles and responsibilities are of members, and obviously if people have got questions at the end, then very happy to take everyone through those. So I'm going to start just with a very brief overview of the CPP vision, and then we're going to look at what we require members to be aware of, what your responsibilities are, really to make sure that we deliver on that vision collectively. I'll touch briefly on the terms of reference. They will provide a detailed explanation of the CPP membership structure and responsibilities. And there's also a link in there because we'll make sure that the terms of reference are available to everyone. And then finally, we'll just wrap up on the expectations that each member may have from the CPP, and in turn, the expectation that the CPP has on them. So we'll start with why is community planning important, and the Community Empowerment Act 2015 places a joint duty on local authorities, the NHS, police, fire, Scottish Enterprise and various other organisations to carry out community planning in their area. And I think that we work really well in partnership in Aberdeenshire, and certainly some of the events over the last few years I think has just reminded us all just how well we work together. So the pandemic obviously, but also major incidents like the recent storms that brought partners together with that collective ambition to deliver a key outcome. Clearly, that requires collaboration. It requires effective community planning from a range of bodies, along with communities, to design and deliver better services that will make a real difference to people's lives. And I think what's key is that active collaboration within the partnership, and that's the real key to success. So what is it that we're here to do? I think the vision of community planning requires each member to fulfil specific roles and responsibilities. And I'll just run through these briefly. create and sustain an environment that supports better partnership working. And this really looks to members to give up their time, to make sure that time is set aside to work in partnership, to really get under the skin of the issues and communicate around what those issues are, and to own the problem. Each partner, it's not just about actively contributing to activities, but also collaborating with other partners. And this might be around sharing best practice to help other members, or sharing data that will help around policy making. But it's very much that active collaboration that is so important. We need to monitor constantly. So we need to be sure that as a partnership, we remain appropriate, that we're meeting the priority.
Oh, I think have you frozen, Kate? I think I know our broadband can be a bit sticky on occasion. Usually comes back in a second, just bear with us, folks.
Apologies. Can I just check? Am I back in?
You are indeed. Just lost
Sorry.
probably 30 seconds worth we lost of it, probably, Kate.
Apologies, my broadband's a bit flaky, so it drops out. So no, apologies. I think I was talking about monitoring and evaluation, and it's whether we are remaining appropriate for meeting the vision. Are we regularly reviewing and ensuring our priorities are relevant? So part of that is that annual review of where we're at, and also we have put in regular reviews of our LOIP. So at the moment we're working on that 5-year review. Then we need to make sure that we are implementing the actions that we have collectively set out to deliver, and listening and communicating. I think it kind of goes without saying, but it's so critical that we are listening, we are engaging, and challenging in a really productive way, which is so important. We have 3 LOIP priorities, and these have been agreed and developed over the past few years. And those 3 priorities are around reducing poverty, connected and cohesive communities, and health and well-being. And again, on today's agenda, you'll see more detailed reports coming through on the progress being made on each of those. To achieve the vision, it's clear that as partners, we need to work together. And I think we need to recognise that there will be differences of opinions, and that's okay. In fact, that's healthy. We welcome that, but that clear communication across the partnership that supports that healthy ground for dialogue and deliberation is really critical. And it is around helping members reach that common ground and establish mutually agreed goals, and to take that collective decisions. So the need for partners to be really proactive and challenging of each other is a critical part of the partnership. I think a really important way of justifying and demonstrating good partnership working is how we perform during our most difficult challenges. And I think we'll all recognise there have been significant challenges over the last few years. But as a community planning partnership and as a board, the work has continued despite all those pressures. So throughout the pandemic, I think we've recognised the importance of our priorities. There's been a huge amount of work done, good progress around reducing poverty and connected and cohesive communities priorities. And we've even introduced a new priority, health and well-being, directly as a result of the evidence that we were seeing coming through the community impact assessment and coming through the evidence of the impact of COVID. So Under reducing poverty, the work being led by Amanda Rowe, you'll see that there's a really strong voice coming through of those with lived experience. In March 2020, we made sure that 2,748 children and young people were receiving free school meals. And by April 2021, that had increased to 4,027. So really tangible outcomes being delivered by that priority. Under connected and cohesive communities, the partners have continued to develop locality plans for Peterhead, Fraserburgh and Bamford Macduff, and that includes a number of booster projects, those short to medium term projects that address gaps and enhance activities in existing plans. And then under the last in the last year, as again we'll see a bit later on, there's been the development of a new LOIP under health and wellbeing, and that's seen a mental wellbeing campaign that was launched via partners. It reached over 156,000 people across Aberdeenshire. And today you'll hear more about that second phase of where we're going to take that piece of work next. And there's ongoing discussions between the Health and Social Care Partnership and AVA on how we maximise the opportunities around that particular area. So I think we are seeing some really tangible outcomes as a result of the work that we're doing. And now we are continuing to dedicate that time and resources to community planning and how critical that is, particularly building on the existing challenges of the pandemic, new challenges like the war in Ukraine, the work being done to support refugees coming into the area, the cost of living crisis. It all demonstrates that locality planning work is so critical for us all around making sure that we try to manage that long-term impact on socio-economic inequality. And together as a community planning partnership, I think that we are clearly stronger by deploying resources and that brain power working together to consider how our ambitions are aligning with and contributing to that longer term recovery planning. So what can we as partners do to make sure that the priorities are being achieved? Obviously, we look at a number of pillars, the first one being inclusion, and it's really making sure that our actions improve all of Aberdeenshire citizens' ability to access our services and to take account of the factors that may create a barrier to that. We need to be accountable, so making ourselves answerable to the communities and people of Aberdeenshire, keep them well informed and seek their views on what we're doing. We've stated that we'll work together as partners and with the people of Aberdeenshire to achieve our vision and encourage communities to recognise their role in sharing that work and contributing towards it. We're very clear that using an evidence base is critical so that any of our actions are based on clear evidence and information and are really driven on what the needs of our communities are. We need to ensure our actions meet the needs of current generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that sustainability piece is so critical. And finally, we need to be efficient. We need to remove duplication, overlaps, and make sure that we really use our resources to the best of our abilities to deliver on those strategic priorities. You'll see that there is we have the terms of reference. There's a link in the slide here, and we'll also make sure that's made available to all the members. And again, you'll see that that's on the agenda today for a bit of an update. It serves as a helpful guidance document that sets out the roles and responsibilities of the executive, the board, and the local community planning groups, and also sets out the structure. as I said, we'll look at the terms of reference on today's agenda, but it really does reflect the current LOIT priorities. And if more work was required from members to look at that in more detail, again, very happy to set up a further piece of work on that. So I think it's important, perhaps as members, you will come to the table with a view of what you will want to get out of a partnership. But equally, I think that's got to be a two-way thing. So what can the collective partnership expect of each of you? As members, you'll be asked to receive information, best practice guidance, and in return, what we ask of members is to make sure that you're communicating these requests and providing assistance in a clear and proactive manner. You indeed may come to the table requesting support. And again, to do that, we would want that active contribution so that if you're asking for something, what do we get back? And do you contribute actively to the discussions that are taking place? And I'm just going to wrap up here. I think as members, the most important thing to remember is that the partnership only works effectively as much as each partner contributes effectively. And I think, therefore, the role of each member in this community planning partnership is crucial for it to succeed in the vision and help improve the quality of life for people in Aberdeenshire. Richie, I'm going to stop there, but very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Kate, thanks for that relative whistle-stop tour round about some of the foundations of the CPP. And again, maybe no bad thing for a reminder for those that have been around it for a wee while, but hopefully helpful for those that are perhaps coming to it a bit more recently. Any questions or comments or additions just to what Kate's set out there, folks? We're happy just to absorb those and get on with our other business, but just pause for any comments or questions at this point. No. Okay, all good. I think again, as ever.
Sorry, Richie, it's on here. Will the slides be circulated, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll send them around with the note, with the minute.
Yeah, that's it. That's helpful, and it's just a way to reaffirm that I guess it's open to any part at any point, at any point, whether it's part of a board meeting or out with indeed, just any of the, I guess, the expectations, the intent, the priorities, just have that kind of conversation. So we do have the structure through the executive group as well as the local community planning groups as well that support all this work. So there's various means by which we can contribute. So I think it's that last point Kate finished on there around just like an active contribution was really much really appreciated from all of us that support the work of the board itself. Okay, if that's okay then, folks, we'll move on into the meeting proper in terms of our formal agenda. So as I signposted just at the start there, the first item really is around the appointment of the CPP board chair and indeed vice chair, and you'll receive an email from us just asking for any expressions of interest and nominations just in terms of both those positions. I'm pleased to say we do have names that have come forward for both, and I'm probably even more pleased to say, in a sense, we've had one name come forward for each of them, so no need to put our councillors through another form of election at this point in time and voting. So for members' awareness then, that the name has come forward, the nomination for chair is Councillor Anne Stirling. Again, the only nomination that came forward, so maybe just on that basis I'll pause and just make sure Anne's content to take that role on, of course, but also just to ensure there's no other nominations that are coming forward. No other nominations I see. Anne, can I take it you're content with that as a...
Yes, thank you very much. Much appreciated, thank you.
Thank you. And also in terms of vice chair, we had Caroline Hiscox has come forward as a as an interest in the vice chair position from NHS Grampian, Chief Executive of NHS Grampian. Don't think Caroline's able to join us today, but it's just in terms of timing. But are there any other nominations for vice chair, folks? I see none. And again, by definition, if again Caroline did confirm that she'd be content to pick up that role, so if that's the case, then Caroline Hiscox will be the vice chair of the Aberdeenshire CPP board. So again, thank you to both Anne and Caroline for stepping into the breach. Much appreciated. Now that being the case, I will stop speaking and pass over to our chair, Anne. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. That's much appreciated. And I think, as you said, Richie, there are a number of new folks around the table, but I think it's really important that we start off this new session on the basis of those priorities that Kate set out in terms of inclusion, accountability, strong partnership, to demonstrate an evidence-based outcome approach which is sustainable and efficient. And I think that sums up really very well the community plan and partnership and how we need to apply ourselves to go forward. I have served on the board for some time, but I'm very privileged to have been appointed as chair. So I'll work very hard indeed to continue to strengthen the partnership and to deliver for our community. So thank you for that. Item 2 on our agenda then is the minutes of the board meeting of the 17th of March with an action sheet attached. And can I ask Richie, please, to present? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. And well, I said a minute ago I stopped speaking. It's just not quite yet. Yeah, in terms of the minutes itself, again, hopefully those that are there will just concur that that's a correct record of the meeting itself. And you'll see there's just a small number of actions that were included in these papers following, one of which is complete that first action in terms of NESCOL and credit unions. So that was confirmed there that there is a Grampian credit union based in Aberdeen that covers Aberdeenshire as well. So as well, you'll note there are also sector-specific credit unions through Police Scotland and NHS Scotland as well. So that action is complete. Second item is actually a substantive item later on, so perhaps can cover it off here if that's okay through the board. And this was this the notion of us looking for board sponsors for the LOIP priorities. And that was again for those that were around that conversation. It was around providing some additional support, if you like, engagement, involvement from the board directly into the LOIPs themselves. Again, just to foster that kind of collective ownership element, but also, again, in terms of the board discussions and challenge and support, just a bit more activity. We, again, just as we said earlier on, have experienced a number of changes in membership over the last couple of meetings in particular. So my suggestion to you is that given those changes, and we now have a new chair and indeed vice chair, I think this would be one we could, I think, more sensibly carry forward to the next meeting once we've had a bit more chance just to confirm the new board membership as we've done today, but also think through just how might that work in terms of the new colleagues around the table and connecting up appropriately to each of the LOIP priorities. So again, appreciate that's nudged it back just one more cycle, but I think just with the continued changes, that seemed to make a bit of sense to us. But I'll just maybe just ask for the board's confirmation if that's a reasonable way forward. And the third action there was around, we picked up more so through the health and wellbeing priority. That was around participatory budgeting, around funding within that priority area. So again, that may be one that we can get a bit more updates later in the agenda, Chair, if that's okay, just through that particular LOIP priority. And I'll pause there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So for those who were present at the last meeting on the 17th of March, can we agree that the minutes are a correct record of that meeting, please? Take silence as an agreement. John's given thumbs up. Thank you. Just going forward, would members please use the hands up, please? I'll monitor that, and that'll show me who is indicating in which order. So if that's okay, thank you very much for that. So those minutes are approved. Thank you. And the action sheet, does anyone have any questions on the action sheet? I see none. Okay, thank you. What we should have done maybe before we started this actually was just to perhaps do some introductions as we've said twice, there are new people at the table. So I just wonder if we can take a moment just to go round the room, so to speak. I'm Anne Sterling, I'm a councillor in Turriff District, and I chair the Communities Committee, and I'm a member, a co-chair of the IJB. So I'll just take it as I see the pictures. So Kate, do you maybe just want to tell people what your actual role is? Well, one of your roles is here, but what your title is, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, Kate Bond. Sorry, I'm assuming you were asking me, not Kate Stephen. We've got two Kates now, just to make it complicated.
Kate Bond, please.
Oh, so I'm Head of Customer and Digital Services for Aberdeenshire Council, and one of the aspects of my role provides that corporate support for community planning. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Chief Inspector Harrison, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Jamie Harrison. I'm the local area commander for North Aberdeenshire, and I work with Angela Keith as I'm the vice chair of the Connected and Cohesive Communities LOIP priority.
Sorry, Jamie, have I demoted you?
Oh, I don't think so.
No, Chief Inspector. No. Kate's saying no.
Yes.
That's okay. Just checking. Okay, thank you. Amanda, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm Amanda Rowe. I'm the Area Manager for Buchan, and I also chair the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Strategic Partnership, which is the lead for the Reducing Poverty LOIP priority.
I got Dan, please.
Hi everyone, my name's Dan Shaw. I'm the Chief Executive of Aberdeenshire Voluntary Action, so we're the third sector interface for Aberdeenshire.
Thank you. And John?
Yes, I represent the 6 rural partnerships around the areas of Aberdeenshire, and I'm their sole representative.
Thank you. And Chief Superintendent, please.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Kate Stephen, current Temporary Chief Superintendent for North East Division and Divisional Commander for the North East. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Mark Finlater, please.
Thanks, Chair. Leader of Aberdeenshire Council, Chair of Business Services Committee, and Councillor for Troop, no less.
Thank you. Susan, please.
Hi, Susan Webb. I'm Director of Public Health here in Grampian.
Thank you. Richie.
Yeah, hi, Richie Johnson, Director of Business Services with the Council.
Thank you. David.
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, everybody. Davy Meldrum. I'm the Group Commander for Aberdeenshire with the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and I'm substituting for Che Ewing today.
Thank you. And Prab.
Hi there. I'm a Policy Officer at the Business Strategy Team, Aberdeenshire Council.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Rab.
Good afternoon, Rab Dixon. I'm Director at Nestrans, the Regional Transport Partnership covering Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire on strategic transport matters.
Thank you. Fiona.
Hi, I'm Fiona McCallum, Business Strategy Manager for Aberdeenshire Council.
Thank you. And Gavin.
Yes, hello, I'm Gavin Clark. I'm an operations manager with Nature Scot in our Tayside and Grampian team that's based in Aberdeen, and Nature Scot being the organisation previously known as Scottish Natural Heritage. Thanks.
Thank you. And Geraldine.
Hello, I'm Geraldine Fraser. I'm a partnership manager with Aberdeenshire Health and Social Care Partnership, here to provide support to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Glenn Reynolds.
Hello, Glenn Reynolds, Councillor for Bamford District Ward. I'm an integration joint board member and chair of the Aberdeenshire IJB Audit Committee. Thanks.
Thank you. And I've got Susan Forbes, please.
Hi, everybody.
I can't hear you, Susan. No, we've lost Susan, I think, have we? Have I managed to call in everybody? Please tell me if I have missed you. I don't think we've covered everybody. So thank you very much, everybody, for doing that. So at least we can put some faces to names and vice versa. So thank you for that. And And thanks very much, Richie. So item 3 in our agenda is a verbal update from the chair of the Community Planning Partnership Executive. And again, that's Richie, please, for a verbal update. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. So relatively briefly in terms of input for today, as ever with the executive, we get some detailed updates around the 3 light priorities, and you've also got them in your agenda today, so I'm not going to repeat many of those discussions we had the executive. Maybe just a couple of highlights on some of those areas. That said, so you'll see in terms of connected and cohesive, there continues to be quite a range of activity being taken forward through that particular group, which indeed is one of the challenges. As I won't rehearse that under this item perhaps, but certainly the executive, we were keen that we got into that discussion about priorities, if you like. So we know resources are stretched across the piece, if you like, but certainly our kind of view was if we can prioritise, if you like, what we can achieve within our resources, that would be an important way forward. But as I say, I'll say no more than that at this point in time until the board have a chance to hear more fully on that later in the agenda. Under health and wellbeing, Kim Penman provided a really good update, and there's some terrific progress being made across the piece in terms of that particular priority. Again, I think the report sets out quite a lot of that just in terms of what's underway and indeed what's to come. And I think that's one of the focuses we had with the executive was around how we can support phase 2, if you like, of the work that this particular group are taking forward. And quite a bit of engagement with local community groups as well as part of this, which is great. And again, some summaries of some of the work of phase 1 was also shared as well. So again, good activity there. Under reducing poverty, and again, Amanda provided that detailed update there, and she's with us today. So again, I won't repeat what Amanda may cover later. However, again, recognise that this continues to be a hugely important area of work for us, and also that the cost of living, some of the challenges that are facing us just at the minute, will bring this into further focus, we anticipate. So as well as the good work that's already underway, there's no doubt that there's more pressure potentially to come, and I think that might be something as a partnership we may wish to consider a bit more fully in due course. But again, some terrific real on the ground work being taken forward through that particular group. We did touch on the 5-year light review. You'll perhaps have noted that from the last board meeting that the board agreed we should do that. And we are taking forward the practicalities about how that would be and who would do that. We did say it would be a light touch review, and again we've got it was through Murray Main, who has now since retired, of course, and we did wish Murray all the best and thank him for his work at the executive meeting when we met. But now that Murray has stepped back, we are. We think we've got an option in terms of how that's going to work, but again, we just need to confirm the detail of that. So again, with the board's forbearance, I would be in a position, I think, to confirm that hopefully soon after the board meeting today in terms of how that goes forward, in terms of who's going to take that review forward. I think that may be useful with a perhaps new chair, new vice chair. That's maybe good timing in that regard too. And finally, we did touch on the citizens panel, which again is on the agenda for later on today, and Kate talked us through that, and again we'll come to that perhaps later in the agenda, Chair. So rather than cover it twice, I'll just pause there in terms of the exec update. But again, continue to thank you to my executive colleagues that join us for those meetings. It certainly get into a fair bit of detail in many of these matters, and that helps us just get well prepared for the board, if you like, in terms of what we cover. But happy to take any questions or comments at this point. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, Richie. Do members have any questions at all? Any observations? No, nothing. No questions. I don't see any questions at all, Richie. But I think, given what you've said and the fact that you're considering how to go forward with the 5-year review, I wonder if it's the appropriate time to have a workshop for members of the board. I think we meet as board and then we don't see each other again really until the following board. But I think this is an opportune moment to prepare or to have a workshop certainly before the next meeting in September, if members are minded to do so, to shape the way forward. Because you've mentioned under the Connected and Cohesive Communities priority the need to prioritise the priorities, and I think I would agree with that. I think there's a lot, and I think we need to be perhaps more focused on outcomes, and really be quite radical in our thinking around all of that. And I think that would be across the piece. I know that there's a huge amount of work has been done under the health and wellbeing agenda, and that really has progressed extremely well. And then, of course, you know, we have to look at locality plans and all these things, because it's not just now. It's not just the north of Aberdeenshire where we need to consider how to go forward in terms of tackling inequalities and poverty. That agenda has moved across much more of Aberdeenshire. So I think there's different opportunities here. I'm not saying we should stop doing what we're doing in the north. That's not what I'm saying. But actually, I think it's how we focus our efforts and our energies. And this would be perhaps an opportune time to do that when you're considering that 5-year review. I do think we need to take a step back, perhaps, and shape the way forward from here, given all the it's a new term, but COVID has presented us with new pressures, and I think we need to take all of those into account as well. So happy to take any views around all of that. Councillor Finneter, Mark, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Totally agree with you. I think a workshop would be the right way forward with this. Going by everything that we've gone through, and we're going to, well, it's a new way of working. We keep going on about the new normal, but it's the future way of working together in our partnerships. But can I ask if it can be in person if possible, rather than the virtual meeting and workshop? Because I think they are more useful, especially when we're trying to get to know everybody within this. I think that would be a good way forward. We'll obviously leave it open for virtual as well, but I would prefer it in person. Thanks, Chair.
Well, I think we have to give people that choice. I think the Director of Public Health, who's on our call, will tell us we're not out of the woods yet. So I think I'm open to having that as a choice if people wish to attend a venue, but I think it depends on people's schedules as well. So we will keep it open and discuss that. Yeah, thank you. Any other views, comments? I've got Councillor Reynolds, please, and then Richie. Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies if my connection cuts out. Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is a good idea, and I think it's. I was going to raise this under the next agenda item, but I think it's pertinent to raise it now. I think both in terms of COVID, as you say, and the new landscape we're in, I think it would be a good opportunity for us to look at how we collate our evidence. And Kate Bond mentioned previously how we go about seeking the views of local communities. And I know that we've got local community groups, but I wonder if we can do that in a better and more meaningful way, and also within that incorporate the buzzword.
We lost you as you were going to share the buzzword.
Workshop would be a good opportunity to look at how we collate evidence, how we obtain lived experience, but also I think significantly, and if I may say, how we monitor and quantify, if you like, levels of performance throughout our piece. Yeah. I think that's significant as well. Thanks.
No, thank you. I'm sorry we lost you as you were about to tell us the buzzword. So you cut out.
That was lived experience.
Yeah. That's fine though, Glenn. Thank you for that.
Did you get the rest of it? Did you get the rest of what I said?
Yes, we did. Thanks. Okay, yeah, but you just cut out at that particular time. So yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to look at all of these things. But I do think we need to be perhaps a bit more focused on it and prioritise more. But anyway, Richie, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And it was clearly keen to hear board members' views. I think that's, again, likewise a good suggestion for all kinds of reasons as has been set out. And just going to offer in practical terms, we can perhaps look at a shape of an agenda for the workshop. As you're thinking about the 5-year review, thinking about where the LOIPs are, again, that focus on outcomes, any issues as you've reflected. We've also got an environmental assessment that we've done across the piece in terms of council information data that we can use perhaps to inform some of that discussion, perhaps include the sponsors discussion in that there too, in terms of buy-in and engagement for the board as a whole around that. So I think there's quite a lively focus we can bring to it. So again, happy to draft something up, and perhaps with some early dates. I know dates can be an issue, perhaps looking at August, perhaps before the next board meeting, as you say, to get a date sorted. And we can run that past you, Chair, just in terms of what you're looking for, just to make sure it matches.
I think that would be good, and I think it would be good to hear from partners, all partners, what it is you're looking for from this partnership as well. Are there any barriers to your participation, etc., etc.? I think it's just it should be a all-encompassing. I think it's a good opportunity just to reset the dial, because I just don't know if everybody feels that it's worth their while coming along, and what do they get to take away from it, and where does it go, and how does it make a difference? So, or if it doesn't, how can we change that? I just think it's time for perhaps a good reset, and actually look at. Again, I'm very aware that we shouldn't be duplicating, and just to make sure that actually we're being able to be quite flexible in how data is shared and things like that as far as possible anyway, and that we're not trying to double up on effort. And I have that little bit of concern around the connected and cohesive communities, when we've got other things coming in on top of that, like place making, etc. So I just think that we need to be really clear and get a very focused and efficient way forward. So it would be absolutely open to everybody to say, is this worth your while? Is it not? Why is it not? What can we change to make it so? How do you feed back to your organisation, etc., etc. So I think it'd just be a good session just to put all thoughts on the table. Okay, so can we take that forward in the way that it's been suggested by Richie, please? We'll have an August date, try and get something in place before the 7th of September to be able to come back and perhaps make some decisions around that. And again, it's how does this community planning board, how does this have the golden thread running through all the strategic objectives, strategic priorities? Do we know what those all are? Are they all speaking to each other? It's just so that we're not actually cutting across things and trying to, as I say, duplicate effort, but actually cut across and make it more difficult for everybody. So that would be a good session to do that. So thank you for that. That takes us then to the updated terms of reference, and I wonder, Kate, if you could introduce this, please, and is this something we should be taking through the workshop as well? But happy to hear from you, Kate, in the first instance, then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the terms of reference were developed back in 2018. We took the opportunity to do a fairly light touch review. The main area of change is clearly we used to have the priority on alcohol. That's now been removed as a priority because it sits elsewhere, and was an area that we felt we weren't really adding much value to as a community planning partnership. So effectively that has gone. It's been replaced by the new priority around healthy living and active lives. So that's the main change. The team have also taken the opportunity to look at the language and just to make sure it's plain English. There are no other substantial changes at this time. All it does is really set out the membership structure and the details of the roles and responsibilities in the way that I highlighted in the induction session. But I think just taking on board your comment, Chair, I think it would be really useful for it to be part of that discussion. It certainly would set the scene for the workshop, and it may be as a result of that workshop we come back again to review these terms of reference. But there just for comment for today.
Thank you very much indeed, Kate. Any questions or comments on the terms of reference? I don't see anything. Please speak up if you are not able to indicate. So are we happy to defer this, or do you want an agreement today, Kate?
I mean, the terms of reference stand from the previous one in 2018. It won't really have an impact on the way that we're working if you wish to defer it, or if you want to agree it for now, and then we can come back and review it again. Entirely up to you.
Well, in order to be able to publish the updated version on the website, can we agree it today? If members have any objections to that, can you indicate, please? Otherwise, we'll agree it today. It'll be updated in the website and we'll return to it at the workshop. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you very much indeed. That's item 5 now on our agenda, is the Violence Against Women Partnership Domestic Abuse update, and it's Lee Jolly who will be presenting this to us today. Is Lee on the call?
I've just gotten in touch with Lee Jolly, and she says she will be in the meeting in the next 3 minutes.
Okay then, that's fine. So we will expect Lee shortly then. Richie, do you have any information you might want to fill in the meantime? Because if I jump to the next item, that's not going to be done in 3 minutes. So I'd rather just give Lee a chance to come onto the call.
Yeah, I wonder if I was going to say just in terms of the ordering of the agenda items, if we wanted to do maybe a relatively brief one, might be the Place Director report later on. Chair, unless Lee's here.
I've got Gavin, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just had what I thought could be a little place filler, and that's to do with the papers that we get for these boards, because it's 140 odd pages, and I expect most of us don't print that off. We're looking at it on a screen, and I actually find it quite challenging to have to scroll back and forth from the first page, which has the agenda on it, to all the individual items. And I would have thought it's possible to have the first page agenda with quick links that would then take us to the individual items. Does anyone know if that's possible, and if it is feasible? Could I request that for future?
Certainly something we can look at, Gavin, because I had a wee note to myself here for discussion with officers about executive summaries as well. So we'll certainly go back and discuss that. I think everybody saw some nods. I think people would appreciate perhaps if we can try and make it more efficient for members to be able to navigate the papers. Rab, please.
Just trying to be helpful, and certainly on my screen in the top left-hand corner, there is a little symbol with like 3 dots and 3 lines. And that's what that does. If you click on that, it gives you the items, scroll down, and then you can click on an individual item. So I don't know if that's on everybody's machines, but that's certainly how I've been using it, and it seems to work okay.
Yeah, you can certainly bookmark it and things like that. So, but I do think going forward it might be more helpful, as well as using that, Rob, to look at an executive summary, so that you've got that as well. So we'll certainly take it off table and have a look at how we might be able to improve the reading time for folks and the accessibility of papers. We'll do that.
Thank you. I think Rab's just highlighted my my ignorance in knowing how to work these PDF documents. So thank you, Rab.
But nevertheless, you raise a
someone
good
pointed
point.
out to me a few days ago, Gavin.
Nevertheless, you raise a good point about the accessibility of these papers and the information that sits behind them. So thank you for that. We'll have a look at that too. Okay, is Lee with us yet? Not yet.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, you
Chair.
are, Lee. Oh, okay. Sorry, Lee. We were just filling in to allow you to transport yourself to join us. So I did announce the item that it's the Aberdeenshire Violence Against Women and Girls Partnership Progress Report on the Strategy and Action Plan. And it's a pleasure to welcome Lee Jolly, our Chief Social Work Officer and Head of Children's Services, to introduce this report. Thank you. Thanks, Lee.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. Really nice to be with you this afternoon. In my role as Chief Social Work Officer, I am also Chair of the Aberdeenshire Violence Against Women Partnership, which has been in existence for a number of years now, but essentially for the past 3 years, we've been working on a very specific strategy and action plan. And the reports that you have before you today is a summary of the work of that particular group, highlighting some of the data, some of our achievements, some of the challenges and our next steps. I'm hoping that folks have had an opportunity to read through the report, because I think that, well, I hope that what comes through really strongly for you is the voice of those with lived experience. The voice of people with lived experience is absolutely crucial and fundamental to any of the work we do in the Violence Against Women Partnership. And to amplify that, we wanted to share some of their thoughts, some of their quotes, some of their poetry that they've shared with us as a group as part of this report. So I do hope you've had time to have a look at those quotes and those poems. Some of them are incredibly powerful and incredibly heartfelt. Rather than go through the report in huge detail, recognising that folks have had it in advance, I have a couple of slides I'm just going to share just to pull out some of the key points, if that's okay, Chair, just to share my screen and to do that. Yes, thank you. So bear with me a second. Usually goes wrong when you try and screen share, doesn't it? And if I can just check that folks can see my PowerPoint now, if someone could just give me a nod, because I can't see you anymore. Can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we can, Lee.
Perfect, thanks, Chair. So the Violence Against Women Partnership in Aberdeenshire, as it says on the title, it's very much about eradicating violence against women and girls in our local authority. And I just wanted to set out from the outset that by adopting a gendered definition, the partnership does not deny or minimise the use of violence against men or within same-sex relationships. The gendered analysis is a reflection that women and girls are disproportionately affected by particular forms of violence because they are women and girls, and it's rooted in gender inequality. And because of that disproportion, partners have come together and prioritised this particular piece of work based on eradicating violence against women and girls. What I also want to be really clear about, though, however, is that all services provided by police, the council, NHS and other services are always provided to all people experiencing domestic abuse, no matter the gender or sexual preference. And specific third sector support for men is available through Fear Free and other organisations that I'd be happy to signpost anybody to should they be interested in that. So that's just me setting out my stall from the very beginning in terms of the focus on this being about women and girls. The report essentially gives an overview, as I say, of the flavour of the work of the last 3 years. It gives you a quick snapshot into the data. So in Scotland, around 2020, which is the most recent data we were able to get, there were approximately 119 recorded incidents of domestic abuse per 10,000 population. In Aberdeenshire, that's a misprint, and I should probably change it as I'm talking. Aberdeenshire, there are 65 per 10,000, so significantly lower. What we also know is that women enduring domestic abuse in rural areas are half as likely as urban victims to report the abuse, so significant fact for us in Aberdeenshire. Abuse in rural communities can last on average 25% longer than in urban areas, again an important fact for us given the landscape of Aberdeenshire. Since 2020, Rape Crisis Grampian have been supporting 178 individuals who have experienced sexual violence, and Grampian Women's Aid continue to receive, since 2020, around on average 100 referrals per month from women who are experiencing domestic abuse. Some of the challenges for the Violence Against Women Partnership in terms of delivery of our action plan have been the impact of COVID and the lockdowns. We very clearly hear from women that the impact of COVID exacerbated their home situation. There was no safety net, there was nowhere to go. Often the use of electronic devices, etc., are monitored and they didn't feel safe using those. And as I say, it wasn't as easy just to leave the house to get support. And so as a partnership, we had to think about different ways of being accessible to women who were experiencing the challenges during lockdown. I've already mentioned the rural context in Aberdeenshire. If we compare ourselves, and it's not like for like, but Aberdeen City's population isn't too different from Aberdeenshire's, albeit how the population is spread out is very different. But they have double the number of reported incidents of domestic abuse as we have in Aberdeenshire. So there's something really challenging for us about the rural context, which also links to service accessibility, a lack of awareness of what domestic abuse looks like, what that means, how that's experienced, and the impact that it can have on women and their children. And I think some of the other challenges around is that whole concept of the roots of violence against women being in gender inequality. My final slide here, I'm sorry the writing's slightly small and I'm happy to circulate this later on, was just to highlight some of the achievements of the group. The Violence Against Women group is a very strong collegiate multi-agency partnership. Attendance is to the credit of those who every couple of weeks come together and show their commitment, roll up their sleeves and help us deliver on that strategy. And if you've had an opportunity at all to look at the strategy, you'll see the list of members covers all agencies that are probably around this table today and wider. Over those 3 years, despite a pandemic, we've not only devised a strategy, but we've delivered on our 3-year plan. And this report, as I say, shows some of the highlights for that. We have created a robust training needs analysis of the workforce across the council and partners, and we've used this to inform a calendar of training, which has been had really good feedback in terms of the quality of training. We've produced domestic abuse guidance. We have been heavily involved in the promotion of national campaigns. We created our own video, which was shared with councillors and officers towards the end of last year, highlighting the impact of gender inequality and what it meant for individuals. We've strengthened the MARAC process, which is a police process with multi-agency partners, very much looking at how we come together to support high-profile victims of domestic abuse. We've made significant strides in promotion of work in schools around healthy relationships and consent, and some of those real wicked issues that our teenagers are often dealing with and trying to make sense of. And we are also heavily supporting the work of the Caledonian programme, which is about supporting perpetrators to change their behaviour. In terms of next steps, I won't read all of these out because they are in the report, but some of the key things that we really want to do is to continue to really embed the voice of lived experience further into our work and into our strategy and into our design and delivery. We want to get in and about that rurality and try and develop ways of mitigating those risks. We want to work really hard at understanding the data and using that to improve the responses. We want to improve our training calendar again and diversify that. We want to really increase the visibility of the Violence Against Women Partnership through events, workshops, briefings, etc. And we're also looking to recruit a violence against women coordinator who hopefully will help me, given that as chair often these things come back and sit with me as the responsible person for pulling together plans and annual reports, but who will have more capacity to also roll up their sleeves and really get in and about some of those actions. So that's a whistle-stop tour. I shall stop sharing at this point, and more than happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Lee, and for that very comprehensive overview, but a very interesting and worrying at the same time report from you. I have Councillor Glenn Reynolds, please, Glenn.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Lee, for that. I mean, I think that this is a first-class piece of work, and very appreciative of the work that you've put in and the whole team behind this. But unless I'm mistaken, there is a gap as I see it, Lee, and I have raised this before, so apologies for those that have heard this. But on page 2 of the document, there is quite rightly the reference to coercive control as being one aspect of domestic abuse. But I really think that it should be emphasised that a part of coercive control can be economic. And this places very much a dilemma that we see in the council, not least in terms of housing, over joint and several liability of aspects such as rent arrears and council tax, where the perpetrator of economic coercive control can actually refuse to contribute or refuse to pay, which causes a dilemma for housing officers, for example, and enforcement, where in a way, if they actually pursued an avenue of enforcement, it would be further perpetuating abuse against a victim. Now, I know, because I've discussed this with council officers, that quite rightly they have indicated that hopefully there would be flexibility in how each and every case is dealt with. But I think that aspect of economic coercion needs to be there. It is a gap in the current legislation, actually, because this should never be allowed to happen. And that goes way up the tree. But I just think that in terms of domestic abuse, that economic component needs to be highlighted, it seems to me, Lee, unless I've missed something. But it's certainly not a criticism of the paper, but I do think it's a gap because, you know, the whole of this paper seems to be geared towards aspects of physical abuse, and that's quite right, and mental. But part of that can be economic, not least in terms of the domestic stresses and all the rest of it that we've seen coming out of the pandemic. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Reynolds. I totally agree with you, and I think part of that's probably about language and my use of the word domestic abuse to incorporate coercive control as well. But I think you make a very good point, and I think in future we probably need to be a little bit more explicit about that in reports, and I'm happy to try and expand so that I'm clear when we're talking about domestic abuse that we're talking about that wider element, including coercive control, and of course the financial element is part of that. So I'm very happy to take that feedback and build it into to future plans and to future annual reports so that it's clear. We worked very hard to move away from the term domestic violence, which was what was used in previous days, because violence in itself sounds like something physical, whereas abuse can be a number of different types of experiences that people have. So yes, thank you for that, and I'll absolutely take that on board and build it in.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. There is a serious outstanding issue, which maybe not for this forum, but just so that it's flagged up to you, Lee, regarding joint and several liability. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Alan Jones from Housing is actually on the group and works very closely with us as a partnership, so I will pick that up directly with him.
Yeah, I've had discussions with Alan. He understands exactly what the problem is. Thanks.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much indeed, both. Any other questions or observations for Lee? I wonder, Lee, how partners around the table can help to raise awareness, as you've described, and certainly as part of the next steps is about, you know, increasing the visibility of support. So I'm looking at RAB here, for example. Can, you know, are there possibilities of getting posters or adverts on our buses, for example, and things like that. So how can we best take forward collectively this agenda and help to raise awareness in the very first instance?
Thank you, Chair. I think that's a really good question. We're currently working on the next iteration of our 3-year plan, and that whole awareness raising is part of that. And we do want to arrange events. Some of those may be for elected members, some of those are for the workforce, some of those are for more general public. So we would really appreciate your support in terms of those events and encouraging attendance and participation. We also do a number of social media campaigns. Not everybody likes social media, I get that, but those that do, and those that do have access to that, again, helping us with that, with the key messages is really, really important. And if that's coming from organisations directly, so Place Scotland, etc., we often retweet and support each other's campaigns in these areas. So that's also a really good way to endorse. But I think we are exploring other ways. So, for example, posters in community centres, in some of our Live Life Aberdeenshire type buildings, etc. So once we've nailed that a little bit more, we will probably come back to you with a broader ask in terms of how you can support us. I think the other thing, if you'll just indulge me for another second, is role modelling. I feel very, very strongly about the gender inequality roots that often lead to violence against women. So those comments that each and every one of us here experience can make as a wee bit of a joke on occasions about, gender, etc., are the same jokes that people make who are actually carrying out those types of domestic abuse, violence against women incidents. Now, that doesn't make us all at risk of being abusers, but it's the same language. And I think there's something really clear for each and every one of us about how we use language, how we portray ourselves, how we role model, and how we challenge. There's lots of lovely quotes, isn't there, around people who say nothing when you hear something inappropriate, and there is something for each and every one of us as responsible citizens, but in our own roles, to really challenge language, to challenge stereotypes. And you'll be familiar with the campaign, I'm sure. I think it's Not That Guy. I always change it a little and turn it into Don't Be That Guy, but I think it's Not That Guy, which is just a really strong Police Scotland campaign about let's not whistle, let's not use that language, let's not make those comments, because we don't want to be that guy who does that. And it's for women too, it's not just about men. So all of those would be ways that we would be asking this particular group and organisations to support us with this particular campaign to eradicate violence against women.
No, that's very helpful, Lee. Thank you, and we welcome you coming back with that. As I say, just aware that there may be an opportunity to get posters on public transport through Nestrans and things like that, and do firefighters carry little cards in their pocket if they have come across anything? It's just different ways to try and get that message across, and certainly from this partnership's point of view, it's everybody's business. So I would hope you come back soon, Lee, and we can discuss how we best support you in that.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you. Thank you very much, Lee. We don't have any recommendations. It's just the report, but I do think it's something we need to keep on our agenda, and perhaps not an annual report, but we get regular updates. Okay, and maybe as an action, an outstanding item of business, if we can put that on to make sure that we get Lee back at the appropriate time. That's fine, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn then to item 6 on our agenda, which is the report and update on delivery of the Aberdeenshire Local Outcome Improvement Plan, Reducing Poverty Priority, and I'm pleased to welcome Amanda Rowe, who will introduce this report for us. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. So the report in front of you is giving an update on the work of the lead partnership group for the Reducing Poverty LOIC Priority, which is the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Strategic Partnership. We meet kind of every 6 weeks or so to try and take forward on a collegiate basis and making the most of the resources that we all have, the agenda, which we can all see over recent months has become ever more urgent and we are really beginning to see the cost of living bite for our communities. The report does include a couple of appendices, but I have just realised that there is an appendix that I reference in the discussion at 4.1 that hasn't been attached. So I just want to confirm to the board that I will get that appendix circulated, but it focused on where the Fairer Aberdeenshire funding has been agreed. So that was agreed by our Communities Committee in March 2022. And I just want to confirm where the focus is, because I think it will tie in with the next section, which is around that Best Start Bright Futures and the focus of the Scottish Government's delivery plan. So the Fairer Aberdeenshire funding and some of the reserves that we have agreed through Aberdeenshire Council for this year are focusing on children and young people. That includes Home Start North East and rights-based youth projects, both in the north of Aberdeenshire and central Aberdeenshire. A focus on health and wellbeing, in particular support for our housing service to support those tenants who perhaps are not engaging with statutory mental health services, but that their mental wellbeing is starting to impact on their ability to sustain a tenancy. And so we need to put that extra support in to ensure that that can be maintained and their mental wellbeing is supported. Of course, fuel poverty, incredibly important at the moment. So we are supporting SCARF with additional advisors. We're supporting their Heat and Eat project. We're also supporting them with finances that will allow them to do debt write-off and also support those who are effectively off-grid. So if you are on bottled gas or oil, you're not getting the same limited protection that others may get in terms of price capping, and that can be a real challenge. And it is, of course, a big issue in rural parts of Aberdeenshire. So support for those who perhaps won't receive support through other routes. We are looking at, again, financial inclusion, support for the Vinery project, which is being delivered through our colleagues in Aberdeen Foyer, and also support for specialist financial advisors who will work across North and Central Shire for those in crisis. And again, that's Aberdeen Foyer. Food insecurity continues to be a focus for the partnership. Again, we are looking to try and ensure security in food, more sustainability, remove that stigma of food bank. So we're supporting mobile pantries and more community-led solutions through areas where areas have had community food funds topped up to allow them to support their local communities, put in place solutions that work for them and that reduce that stigma that we often hear our lived experience families telling us about when they are going to food banks. And it's not the food banks that are necessarily stigmatising them, but that's what that place is known as. So we're really trying to focus in local place-based solutions. We're also continuing to invest in our community-based information and advice services, and in particular increasing the number of information and advice workers who are linked to our GP and trusted partners. So for example, again, we are looking at supporting information and advice workers work with Progress and Dialogue, who are a grassroots organisation who work closely with our most marginalised communities. We're also supporting information and advice workers linked to some of our food partners as well. So I will share that because I appreciate that's been a very fast run through, but it's just to let the board know that there is a lot of focus on the funding to support that cost of living and to try and support our families and our young people. Our key focus at the moment as a strategic partnership is responding to the Scottish Government's Best Start Bright Futures delivery plan. So that's the Scottish Government's own poverty plan 2022 to 2026. And that will need to reshape the Child Poverty Action Plan that Aberdeenshire prepares. That's across ourselves as a local authority and NHS Grampian as the two statutory partners who must do it. But actually we do it as a partnership. We do it across all the partners that sit around the community planning partnership table. So we are working out how best to respond to the updated plan from the Scottish Government. We are not seeing any additional resources coming through necessarily. There are additional resources coming through from different parts of the Scottish Government, often short-term one-off funding that we are using to have the biggest impact for our families. But in reality, it's still about how our strategic partners work together to use our capacity and our resources to have biggest impact. So we are working with Poverty Alliance. They are helping us facilitate discussions across the partnership to ensure that we develop our plan for the next 3 years, absolutely around that integration and collaboration approach that we've always tried to ensure is there, to ensure we deliver on the Best Start Bright Futures, but also that we deliver on the reducing poverty priority for our community planning partnership. You can see we've started that work. We've done a kind of mapping piece of work already. So we have shared that as Appendix 2 on the report, but our next Tackling Poverty and Inequality Strategic Partnership Group later this month will be a facilitated session to start work on that in more detail, and we will report back to the board at its next meeting. And if there is workshops going on, we would really appreciate perhaps if we can bring in Poverty Alliance to work with us as a board to help us deliver the action plan. That would maybe be something I can discuss with Kate and our team as to how we could perhaps facilitate that. And finally, there is an update on one of the tests of change that we are carrying out at the moment, which is a project in Peterhead specifically focused on supporting digital inclusion within a neighbourhood of Peterhead. It involves a lot of just talking to people to find out what they need and what would make a difference. And the idea is that we get this test of change and we can then look at what the different solutions might be for different families that we can then look to roll out on a wider basis across Aberdeenshire. More than happy to take any questions or any comments from the board on the work so far.
Thank you very much indeed, Amanda. And there's a huge amount of work going on, absolutely. But as you've said, it's a really important piece of work and much more widespread than we would like. So, any questions for Amanda? Rob?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Amanda. I really just wanted to ask if any work had been done on transport poverty as such. I mean, obviously the cost of travel is going up dramatically, and it's certainly exercising a lot of hours in media at the moment. In particular, I wanted to mention the fact that the Scottish Government have now introduced, I think through a soft launch, a free travel scheme for under 22s. My understanding is that there hasn't been a great take-up on that. Now, I understand that in very rural areas where there might not be an awful lot of bus services, it's not quite as much of a golden egg as might be in more urban areas. But nevertheless, I just wondered whether that was something that we could do anything to promote or share information about and just make sure people were aware of that opportunity, particularly when travel is so expensive by car and other modes at the moment.
Through you, Chair?
No, just carry on. It's conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, yeah.
Rab, yes, we're aware. We're certainly getting quite a lot of feedback that the uptake is low and that actually it's quite a difficult process for young people to go through to get access to the card that will allow them the free travel. And as you say, it's then further impacted by the fact that for a lot of rural settlements, the bus services are not necessarily there that help them. However, we are working with our CLD colleagues and others to try and encourage better uptake. We are looking at how perhaps we could try and link some of this with things like the holiday programmes that our colleagues in ECS and Live Life Aberdeenshire are working on, and whether we could encourage a greater uptake by linking to the activities that perhaps those older teenagers will want to participate in, and kind of using that transport as a way of saying, we can support you with this, but it would be great if you had your card for your free transport and we'll make sure the timings all work. So we're looking at a range of ways. Transport is something that, yes, we absolutely understand is a challenge. And we have within the Tackling Poverty and Inequality reserves that the council have set aside. Transport is kind of throughout all the different themes in terms of things like employability and rural poverty. So we're looking at, certainly with things like the rural poverty theme, that areas themselves and local communities is about what might the local solutions be. Now we looked at something like Be Linked in the central Buchan area. We tried it, it didn't necessarily work, but it was good to try it to find out why it didn't work. And it's now about working with our colleagues such as yourself and our public transport unit colleagues around things like the success of the Inverurie pilot, and trying to work out, is there a way of not necessarily replicating that, but the positives of that, could we support through some of the funding we have? So absolutely recognise that transport is one of the key areas for us, particularly as we know in Aberdeenshire, car ownership is higher because public transport is perhaps not as convenient, but with the costs of fuel, public transport is becoming more of a potential first choice for people, but that doesn't necessarily make it much more affordable for them. So more than happy, if there's something maybe we could connect and have that conversation, that would be great.
Yep, that would be super. Thanks, Amanda.
Is Amanda's report an item that maybe the Nestrans board would take, Rob?
We could certainly look at it and think whether there are highlights that we could pick up for them. Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of cross-cutting.
There is, yeah.
Matters there. So again, introducing Amanda and Annette Johnson to Nestrans board, and perhaps again the city will be experiencing maybe similar issues, but I think Nestrans could certainly, it might be useful to expose this agenda to the board. So thank you for that, Rob.
Absolutely. I'd welcome if there's an invite to the board or another group, Rab. I would really welcome coming along and having that discussion.
Thank you very much.
That's excellent, thank you. And I suppose the same would apply to the health transport matters, which I think infrastructure services and the council were discussing today, or looking at the partnership review. I don't know if you've any input into that, Susan, into the HTAP, but Rab will be linked into that anyway. But
indeed, the Health and Transport Action Plan, as I understand it, links into Nestrans, so we're all connected in. So I think going to the Nestrans board will support that. So that would be really helpful. Thank you. I suppose, can I ask a question on the floor? I suppose looking at this, Amanda, and looking at the huge amount of work that is going on, and knowing that the scale of the challenge is going to increase, I just wondered how connected some of the work that all of the organisations, I think, around this table are taking forward under the heading of anchor institutions, whether we can directly align some of that to this work.
It's not something that's come up so far, but actually that's a really good point. And whether it's something then that for the strategic partnership, we often look at doing thematic discussions to try and ensure that we make all of those cross connections. So perhaps that's one we need to pick up on sooner rather than later.
Okay, thanks.
And sorry to pick on you, but John Loveday, is this an agenda that the rural development partnerships are coming across? Do you know?
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, it is. And as you know, one of the partnerships is obviously very much involved in the transport side of things. But yes, we certainly in Formartin we've been looking recently at doing some more work on local transport. Because we've obviously, from what Banff has done in the past, or Banffshire has done, it's quite a useful pattern to try and follow, and it's something that we might want to get involved in. We have tried it before. We did finance some small routes early on, about 5 or 6 years ago, but it didn't work particularly well. But I think it's something that we need to look at. The transport situation is quite an important part that we will certainly look at in the future.
Thanks for that, John. And again, Amanda, that's another link in to the rural development partnerships, just to try and tie that in as well. But I know that again, through Nestrans and RDPs and yourself and just trying to set all of that, align all of that would be good. Dan, please.
Thank you, Chair. During the Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund that Ava distributed just recently, we could have quite easily spent a significant amount of that on community transport type applications. One thing we did say to the groups that applied was we'd really like you to start thinking about how you can work together and build a bigger network, and maybe come back to us in the next round of funding. So I'm expecting that Ava will receive the next round of that funding probably in July time, and we'll start distributing later in the summer. So yeah, it's something that we became very aware of as part of that process. And I think if there's something we can do to be linking in with Annette, who was actually part of our assessment panel, then that's something that we can really take on and try to do some joined up work so that we're not sending money all over the place and probably having very little impact, whereas if we think strategically, we can probably have a bigger impact.
I think that's really helpful, and I'm not sure if you do have a transport element to the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Partnership, Amanda, but I think there's obviously some interest around the table here, and Gavin, you would have that interest as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that this is obviously a bit of a cost crisis, that people are having to look at this issue more thoroughly. But I suppose I was simply going to point out that there's an opportunity too, that you know, if we can get away from transport modes that are dominated by the private car, then you know it's far more sustainable and much better for climate change, which is of course one of Scottish Government's top priorities. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, you know, e-bikes and all these sort of things as well. And, you know, how do we take that forward in a more impactful way, perhaps? And I know that, Gavin, I think you're a keen cyclist as well. So it's just using all of those bits of expertise, Amanda. And as I say, it sounds as if there's quite an interest around the table in the transport. The future of transport across rural Aberdeenshire. So again, that's maybe something that could be developed. But I think it's really helpful to bring all of that together. And Richie, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And just I'll pick up with Amanda off table and might just check back in with Rab as well on some of this. We started doing a little bit of work just again with a fresh pair of eyes about that very matter about transport and mobility across the Shire. One we have looked at before through a council lens, but I think there's more to it now in terms of the cost of living, the cost of fuel, the different work and living patterns still. So again, there's an understandable focus on some parts around coming back into the office, if you like, depending where the office is. But on the flip side of that, you're then encouraging more travel. So it's going to be, each circumstance will be, I guess, assessed on their own merits. But so there's just a new context around that. So I'll very happy to pick that up off table and again pull in partners as we need to around about that to join the dots in this one.
Thanks, Richie, because you have the lead, I think, don't you, for transformational projects and around the transport agenda. So I think there's an opportunity here to really do something quite different. As I say, I think I used the word radical at the beginning, and I think we need to be quite radical going forward and look at really creative ways of taking this agenda forward. Okay, that's fine. I don't see any other indications. So quite a number of actions there. But basically for Amanda and Richie, perhaps to pull together and to capture the interest from all the different partners that have spoken to this report, Amanda, and perhaps look at how we can best take forward a transport arm of your Tackling Poverty and Inequalities agenda. That would be really, really helpful if you don't have an existing one already. Rab?
Chair, I don't want to overcomplicate things, but transport also obviously has very strong links to the health and well-being. but we've also always, I think, felt that probably we fitted most neatly under connected and cohesive communities. So, you know, and as I said, I don't want to complicate it, but just to make that reference that all three of the priorities have transport linkages. But yeah, absolutely happy to sort of take it off table and see if we can develop some policy ideas about improving mobility, but with cognizance to the three LOIC priorities as well. Thank you.
I think you make a good point, Rob. It is actually integral to everything. And yeah, and it is, it's woven through all. So I think we recognise that, and we don't want to stretch out over the three priorities, but I think we can focus on this particular agenda, and I think that will have reach right across.
No,
so
absolutely, and it fits in very well, obviously, as you know, with the climate change concerns as well. So, you know, we're not working in a vacuum. I think all the policy documents are there, but it's now about how we make the decisions that make a difference in people's lives. So.
No, that's excellent. Thank you very much for that. And I think it'd be also good to allow Nestrans to be a bit more visible in all of these things as well. So that's great. So thank you for that. So the recommendations to this item is to acknowledge the progress being made around the LOIC priority, reducing poverty, and comment on the Towards a Fairer Aberdeenshire 2021 report and identify any changes or improvement within this area of work which the Tackling Poverty and Inequality Strategic Partnership Group should consider progressing as part of future work plans. Well, I think we've done that, and I think Amanda's got a considerable amount of information and commentary there. And Amanda, are you content? Yes. Okay, so are those agreed? That's fine, thank you very much. Colleagues, we've been going for an hour and a half. Does anyone want to have a comfort break at this point? Yes, so can we break for 10 minutes? We'll resume then at 15:45. So thank you for that. Thank you. Hi, folks. Hope you managed to get a cup of something.
I've still got my cold coffee from the start of the meeting.
Oh, Jamie. Oh, my word. Hi, Caroline. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Anne. You?
Good, good, thank you. We're all getting back.
Chair, can I just make sure that my mic is working now?
Is that Susan? Yes, it
Yes.
is, Susan. Yes.
Thank you.
Are you preparing for the next item, are you?
Yes, I certainly am that, and I didn't want to be caught out.
No, no, it's fine. Okay, that's us at 3:45, and we are back, I think, to resume the meeting. I think we're probably most of us back, so we'll resume then with item 7 on our agenda, which is the health and wellbeing LOIC priority. And with us we have Susan Forbes and Carolyn Lamb, who are going to take us through the report today. So Susan, are you going to start for us, please?
Yes,
Thank
I will.
you.
I shall do that. Thanks very much, Chair. So I'll provide an update on the work that's been happening around the health eating, active living strand of the health and wellbeing LOIP. So we've been working, the SPG have been working with, that's one aspect of the work to develop draft actions to address healthy eating, active living, and this other strand of the work is around community engagement to understand what the community's assets and barriers are around healthy eating, active living, so that will feed into the development of an action plan. So just to update on the community engagement part of the work. So phase 1 was completed in March to identify the assets and barriers around eating well and keeping active. We had 504 people involved through a range of mediums, and the majority of people felt that it was easy for them to be active, 76%, and to eat healthily, 72%. However, a quarter of those people responding highlighted that there were challenges, and they were around cost, access, mental health, as seen as most significant especially for those disadvantaged and vulnerable groups. Local green spaces and shops, community groups and networks were seen as particularly valuable. So the findings of the phase 1 part of the community engagement was taken to the HEAL SPG Strategic Planning Group at its meeting in March, and it was decided that the next phase, phase 2, should sort of delving a bit deeper to understand with sort of key those vulnerable population groups about what makes it challenging to eat well and be active. And so focus groups have been scheduled for May, some have been completed already, and for June as well, to have those discussions with specific groups, and those groups include carers, people whose English is second language, people on low income, people with disabilities, families and young children, and people with mental health problems. And there are going to be the themes that they're going to cover in this engagement are around costs and impact on eating well and keeping active, making the most of our green spaces, motivation, well-being and keeping healthy, involving communities and bringing about change and stigma and about how we talk about health. The Community Planning Executive approved £7,000 to have those meaningful community participation and to develop the HEAL plan. And in addition to supporting that money to support the focus groups, we've also be progressing community-led research and a mini public. The Community Engagement Officer, they've been linking in with existing groups and are working with those groups to explore and carry out some research in a bit more depth. The mini public, that's been planned for July, and the mini public will involve the strategic planning group partners who want to be involved in that, along with the members of the public, to work together to look at some draft actions to work up and confirm a HEAL action plan. So it's anticipated up to 16 people will be recruited to be part of this mini public. And there will be, well, I was going to say the significant commitment over 2 days, which that is a significant commitment, but from what I'm understanding now, it's just over 1 day. That's just, I've just recently been made aware of that. But people will be paid to take part in the process, just to ensure that you know, it's inclusive and nobody's disadvantaged on the grounds of income. The other side of the work that we've been doing, as I alluded to earlier, the strategic planning group have been over a period of time looking at the evidence of unhealthy eating and inactivity and what needs to happen, what actions need to be put in place in order to address this issue. And there were back in about November and January workshops and with this strategic planning group, and there were 87 actions identified across 4 key themes: physical activity, food accessibility, education, self-management, and mental health and well-being. And these have recently been condensed to 49 actions. These actions were cross-checked against the themes that were coming through from the community engagement programme, and this was considered also at the SPG meeting in March. And what we recognised at that point, that what the communities were saying, which would, you know, were of some help for them to be active and to eat healthily, resonated somewhat with some of the actions which had been developed, or draft actions that had been developed by the SPG, and they were around outdoor and green spaces to grow your own food, cooking skills, affordable options to be active and eat healthily, motivation, improved road safety for cycling, body image, healthy and affordable food products and meals provided by food vendors. And more recently, there was an SPG completed an exercise that partners were asked to look at the 49 actions, and they were asked to rank, you know, which ones were important they felt and which could they contribute to. And this we felt would be helpful at that stage to really kind of understand, start to shape up what a workable action plan would look like, and what additional resource would be required if there was resource lacking across some of the draft actions that were there in the plan at the moment. The mini public will look at those actions, and together we will work out a plan and agree that HEAL action plan, we hope, by August. So that's all I have to say on the update around health eating, active living. Will we just move on to the mental well-being?
Yeah, can I just ask around all of that and all of those 49 actions, are you cross-referencing with Live Life Aberdeenshire, who've got a Live Life Well strand, for example? And are there any of these actions being, you know, identified in other strategies and policies and things like that?
So Live Life Aberdeenshire have or sit on this group, and they've contributed towards the, you know, all the action, the 49 actions. So what the communities are saying, if there's anything around Live Life, like affordable access to leisure centres, Live Life Aberdeenshire are very much aware about what the communities are saying around that.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine, Susan. Thank you. And if you could just give us a very brief overview, that would be great. Thank you for the mental well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think
sorry,
Kim
it's Carolyn. Yeah.
Carolyn, yes, sorry. So Kim was asked to give an update, I think, for this group on the second phase of the Mind Your Mind campaign. And that was really to give you an oversight on the work that's been done around scoping that and costing that. So the exec requested that this proposal be informed by people with lived experience. So there was a previous part to the campaign last year. So this is just coming on to the next phase of that Mind Your Mind campaign that we've been looking to take forward. So we have got an oversight group that have been involved in that process. So that group really are made up of different partners from third sector, from public health, that are part of that oversight group, including community planning officer as well, who's a representative on that group. So we work with different clients that are working with existing services that are through the third sector to kind of get some lived experience feedback really on the previous campaign, what they thought of the campaign, was it what were they aware of it? You know, did it resonate with them? Was there specific pieces of work that we could take forward for that second phase? So we didn't get a huge uptake, I have to admit. So we had 21 people participated in that process, but we did get good feedback from those people. So it was, you know, it was worth the exercise itself. Networks of Wellbeing really provided a lot of that input, but we also got other services that took part, and we did some online feedback as well. So from that feedback, the majority of the participants agreed that a population-wide campaign was what they were looking for around mental wellbeing. Really giving you some comments here in the papers really that I'll read out to you that really were, I think we need to change population's attitude to mental health, and seeing it as something which affects many really helps. So it's not about people being ill, it's around everyone has got mental health. We've all got just different aspects on that system of where we are on a day-to-day basis. Really brings it into the open and everyday life. Good that there is people sharing how they keep mentally healthy. And, you know, it was really positive feedback from those that said they had seen it, but not everybody has seen the campaign. So we're not saying everybody has, but we're looking at, well, how do we use this going forward? So they like the ideas of the 5 ways to look after mental wellbeing that we use. So these were just simple tools to recognise mental wellbeing. And they kind of gave us feedback really that there was specific things that they felt we should be really focusing on more. And that was really around making connections, really came through as a strong need to help build on the work around supporting our communities. Participants highlighted the need to create opportunities for connections to be made to really reduce people feeling so isolated, and really enabling people to share their experience. So it's fine us promoting things, but how do we kind of build on that work to really support people's mental well-being? Also a strong need to have face-to-face community-based opportunities, as we're now moving out of that phase of being very isolated in our working from home sort of situations. We really need to get out there and do more face-to-face work. And also the need to promote the campaign locally, so not just relying on social media, which we tend to have been doing quite a lot, I would say, that we don't have that facilities for maybe promoting leaflets, posters. So again, moving back into that sort of mode as well as the social media side. And then there was clear opportunities to really raise awareness and improve connections locally to the wide range of local initiatives that have received the AVA mental health and wellbeing funding that Dan spoke about earlier. So really using that links to really find out how is that supported people in their local communities to support mental wellbeing. So as part of the process, we have worked with Mearns and Gill on the first part of the campaign, and they've kind of it's been approved that we can work with them again for the second phase because it is under the £50,000 budget. And the oversight group have, as I said, have been working with them on this piece of work. So just really to say that the next piece around that is really about developing a specific landing page for Mind Your Mind on a specific website, because we found that people were saying they really struggled to find some of the toolkits that we had made up initially around Mind Your Mind. So I don't know if anybody's looked for that online, but it's quite difficult to find it. So we are going to be building on that, looking at creating more of a toolkit of material to encourage communities to use the downloadable information to really help build on having more conversations in communities around mental well-being. And they also are going to take forward a social media campaign as well as that to build on phase 1. And we're going to be working with a radio station really that have come on board to say that they are willing to do much more over a 3-month period, and really using those messages daily through that radio station to help build some of those conversations. I don't know if there's anything else really I can add to that. Would that be enough, Chair, at the moment?
No, absolutely, Carolyn. That's a very good overview. Thank you very much indeed for that. Does any questions? Councillor Reynolds, please, Glenn.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Carolyn, for that. One of the things that occurred to me is that, you know, I mean, I commend all the work that you're doing, and I think it's absolutely right, of course. And if anything, seemingly down south, the Office of National Statistics has indicated that, you know, they're facing an absolute epidemic down there in terms of mental health issues. And obviously we quite rightly look at mental health in terms of our communities, but one of the things that's rising to the surface now, and I'm aware of who's sitting around this virtual table, is the impact on burnout in terms of our emergency services. Yesterday a report came out that indicated that within the Scottish Police Force over the last 5 years, mental health absence, days off, has risen by 22%, and that's probably the tip of an iceberg. And I think maybe in relation to other emergency services as well, this is quite pertinent. So it just made me rethink that you know, we're looking at mental health within our communities, which is absolutely right. But those people that we rely on to keep us safe are also very much and arguably increasingly so, very much part of the mental health picture as we go forward. Thanks.
Can I reply to that?
Yes,
Chair?
certainly, Carolyn.
Yeah. Just to say that I suppose we use the word communities and people think of that as being communities as in a place. But I see communities not just as an area. Communities are communities of can be staff as well. So it's not just focusing widely on just area populations, because staff live in those communities. So I would see it as, yes, these tools are for also promoting staff well-being, if that answers what you're linking to.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was absolutely right. But to flag up that emergency services are bearing a real brunt at the moment as well. Thanks.
I don't know if Kate or Jamie want to make any comment in terms of, I know that certainly from staff welfare point of view, that was a priority for our local commanders. So I'm not sure. Jamie, do you want to pick that up, or?
Yeah, I can come in. Absolutely. First thing I would kind of reassure is that, you know, the mental well-being of our officers is absolutely at the forefront of our minds in everything we do. And, you know, more so than ever following any kind of incident, we have robust processes in place to kind of ensure everyone is well afterwards. In addition to that, you know, we have specialist posts within sort of A division, which is around ensuring the well-being of officers, who looks at a whole host of different avenues we can employ to support, you know, our staff, you know, and officers on the ground. So it's really is at the forefront of everything we do. I would also say, you know, we deal with an increasing amount of mental health related calls. It takes up a significant amount of our time. So, you know, again, without going into huge detail in this meeting, we go to a lot of work to ensure that we are working effectively with partners to kind of signpost people appropriately and make sure they're getting the best help and support that they can. Because very often the police aren't the best people to do that. There's people who are trained and are experts that can provide better assistance. We're often just the first point of call, I suppose. But yeah, absolutely. It's I suppose in closing, it's just that reassurance that we work very hard to support our officers, and also I think there's a culture created now within all kind of, you know, emergency services where officers feel more able to kind of raise their hand and say, well, you know, I'm not actually feeling just okay about this. So that probably impacts on the figures you see, I think. But that's only a positive thing in my position. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chief Superintendent Stephen, you indicated and then took your hand down. Did Jamie cover the point you were going to make, or do you want to come back, Kate?
Thanks, Chair. He pretty much did cover it, and I think the other point I was going to make, which is probably more aligned to your chairing of your other committee in terms of thematic reviews and whatnot that we take to various scrutiny boards. So I know I've got a discussion in Aberdeen City, and they're very keen to hear more about that internal kind of mental health, well-being, the work and the support that we're providing as an organisation. And I'm glad the councillor raised it, because it has been very kind of much front and centre following the kind of Q4 reporting, and is very much in the kind of forefront of our minds and is spoken about on a daily basis. So it was really just to make that offer, Chair, in terms of a similar or same report coming through Communities Committee at an appropriate time in relation to that, which can clearly be shared if indeed it's appropriate through this forum as well. But it was just to make that offer and to thank Jamie for his contribution there. He's covered everything in terms of what I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think with a different hat on, I'll accept your offer of a thematic report. So thank you for that. I've got Councillor Bailey. Neil, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would just like to say I was really, glad and inspirited to hear from Caroline Lamb when talking about the Mind Your Mind campaign and what's proposed there. And I'm looking through the bullet points to 5.7. I would just like to say that, under the second one there, create a toolkit of material, which is good, because it's getting that message out to the public using that toolkit. But what I'd like to see is a tie-in with this campaign and other campaigns, I guess, as well, where we can use our LLA facilities, our actual physical facilities where people meet, community facilities, where we can use the branding and so on from the Mind Your Mind to get it out there early and use it within our facilities. So it's a tying together the branding, the campaign, but also with the facilities we've got, so that people, when they come in, the public, when they come into a facility, they see the branding, they get familiar with the branding, they know what's going on, they know what activities or whatever is coming from a campaign, and they know where to turn to for information. So it's having that tie-in with times and dates beforehand, before even a campaign is actually launched, that something's going to be happening, that something's going to be there that they can turn to. I think that's really important, and that's something I would like to see incorporated. That's just a suggestion, but something I'd like to see incorporated into that campaign.
No, thank you for that, Neil. And I think that as with the previous, the healthy eating and active living, I think Live Life Aberdeenshire, Live Life Well will be around this, Carolyn, and absolutely your point well made. So in any planned campaign, that would be taken into account. Susan Webb, please, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, I think it's really helpful to get an update around this campaign, but it sits within wider work around better mental health for all. And I am very conscious that maybe at our development session, it would be really helpful for us to have a conversation about what we mean by mental health, because we often use that term but describe it in very different ways. We are aware that there's fantastic activity going on across the Northeast, and in fact this afternoon individuals are coming together to begin to share the practice, and I'm just wondering whether a more holistic overview of better mental health for all would be helpful at a future meeting, because I think it would support what we heard today in terms of this work. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Susan, and I think that would be very helpful to have that wider picture for us to have a look at and to hear about how that's been taken holistically. So I think that would be very helpful. The one query I would have is how, on the back of all of this, how do we capture evidence of outcomes? There's a considerable spend here as well, and a considerable amount of work and effort going into all of this, but actually how do we know it's having any impact at all? So for me, that's a real question that I would pose back to you, because we're also very supportive of the work that you're doing, but we need to be able to demonstrate that we've got a good outcome or outcomes from it. So what are the plans for gathering the evidence, having some sort of performance measure, and making sure we can demonstrate, the benefit for our communities. I think that's the real crux of it for me. Dan, and then I'm definitely going to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in and say, I think in answer to your question, that's part of the work that Ava will be doing as we take on the lead of the mental wellbeing priority. So we'll be looking to do some of that work around joining strategies together, doing the work around how do things link and where are the links and how are those links being made and created and maintained, but then also looking at what's the impact. So
no, that's helpful, Dan. Thank you for that.
Put my hand up for that one.
It's really important that we can actually demonstrate how we're making a difference here, and and that this work, the work we've just been considering, links back through health and social care, and through the partnership managers, and all of that needs to be tied up. And as Susan has said, people are coming together to to look at how they can take this forward collectively. So I really think there's a really big job here to actually map this and to make sure that everybody's pulling in the same direction and that we're all working together. So thank you for that. So we'll return to that, I think, and we would need to consider how best to demonstrate how this is making an impact. But the recommendations for this are at 2.1 and 2.2. Asked to comment on the progress made to date with heal and mental wellbeing strands, and comment on the Mind Your Mind campaign second phase proposed elements set out at 5.7. And I think we've done that. And I would like to thank Susan and Carlin for coming along today to present the paper. And I think it's generated some really good discussion. So thank you very much. And we will return to this in due course. So thank you both very much indeed. Item 8 on our agenda is the Connected and Cohesive Communities LOIP Priority Update. And again, we have Jamie Harrison from Police Scotland who's going to present this for us, and I'll hand over to you, Jamie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. With your kind of permission, I'll take a kind of a whistle-stop tour through the kind of paper, because my kind of expectation is there'll be a few questions at the end of it and maybe a bit of debate. So I'll kind of pick out some highlights and we'll have a discussion afterwards. So essentially, the kind of background to Connected and Cohesive is back in 2017. It was kind of established, and the kind of priorities that were agreed at that time were that the Connected and Cohesive lead group would oversee locality planning arrangements, would bridge the gap around the monitoring and evaluation of booster projects, would revise their terms of reference to ensure kind of local socio-economic issues are escalated through the group, would widen the kind of scope of the group to include an approach for dealing with socio-economic issues highlighted through the various area community plans, and would recognise the need for a strategic approach. So essentially, the next kind of update there is in January this year, the Community Planning Board members considered and offered comment on a draft reporting framework around it. And at this time, they agreed the high-level performance indicators for this LOIP, which was to be issues around income deprivation, employment deprivation and crime rates, which were broadly agreed as being kind of top-level indicators that provided a general indication of where things were going. In addition to that, the board considered the draft reporting framework linked to this strategic and operational action, and from that we came up with a draft action plan which has been circulated previously as well, and it links into all the LOIP priorities across Aberdeenshire. Going on, so what we've done since then is the terms of reference and membership has been widened to include kind of other services in the council, to include partnership organisations, local area managers. We agreed the high-level performance indicators. We took and got feedback on the performance framework that was agreed, and we identified that kind of one of the important aspects was to kind of identify and reflect emerging issues that are coming from the locality plans. And again, I'll come to this at the end as what I see as one of the kind of priorities of this LOIP priority. So the kind of update we have is in the most reading in December 2021, the discussion around this priority continued to focus on the action plan and what the monitoring performance framework was going to be. We acknowledged the kind of important links to locality plans and the socio-economic platforms that were in existence. and we acknowledged the kind of importance that the structure was to include input from local area managers who were going to be key to kind of driving this plan going forward. Unfortunately, back in March, the meeting that was intended to happen didn't, because of a lack of staffing being available to actually progress it, which again we can discuss later on in this meeting. Kind of a positive thing that's came out in February this year is the development of the Shaping Places for Wellbeing priority. Now, essentially, this is a plan which is where it utilises a system-wide approach, sort of a partnership approach for dealing with kind of issues right across the community, where basically we're going to link health against the places where people live and work. Fraserburgh was reviewed for that, and it was identified that Fraserburgh actually fitted the criteria. So it's essentially about drawing the links between place and public health and making sure we're doing everything we can. I mean, from a personal point of view, I know from Fraserburgh we've been involved in the Operation Protector, which is obviously the kind of action that we've taken to support people that are impacted by the harm from drug use in our communities. And again, I've seen the real positive outcomes that have came from that. So I think utilising this kind of a partnership approach to support places, linking it to health, is absolutely critical. There's coordination hub updates now in the plan. I'll pick out some kind of just key highlights from them that I saw. So starting off with the Peterhead locality plan, this obviously nests within the Buchan community plan, and it's basically there because to link actions that deliver additional support for people who are experiencing greater inequalities. Recent updates we found was that actions to promote the COVID-19 vaccination programme, and also the focus that we've had in Peterhead around poverty, health and wellbeing in the communities hubs. Again, I won't go into any great detail for them because Amanda Rowe's already spoken around most of that and knows more about it than I do, in fairness. The other things that have been spoken around in the Buchan Communities Hub is the kind of sustainability choices around transport. So that's detailed in there. There's future workshops being planned which are going to be looking at the development of youth provision, including community surgeries. Sticking into the Buchan Poverty Hub, again, we're looking, as Amanda has already discussed, but very briefly, addressing the digital divide, access to food and skills, etc. And the Buchan Community and Wellbeing Hub, again, the thing I would pick out for Buchan there is the theme of youth provision in Buchan, where it was explored, and we're looking to build knowledge of what's available and where any gaps exist. So really positive work ongoing around there. And if moving into Banff and Buchan, again, similarly, there's a lot of work ongoing. Kind of ongoing work includes mapping the existing community activities across Banff and Buchan to develop the action plan, to build community resilience and local networks of support, to reduce social isolation and loneliness, developing more opportunities for social connections, and to improve access and raise awareness of wellbeing prevention and intervention activities in local communities. Again, an update for the Banff and Buchan Poverty Hub is that an online event took place on the 28th of April to bring key stakeholders together with an up-to-date picture of the status of the hub and what's happening specifically to tackle poverty and inequalities. There's been some challenges in kind of pushing things forward. The Banff and Buchan Community Planning Officer has been absent from work. However, there's a person coming in to kind of temporarily cover that position. So I think that's commenced on the 13th of June, so that's going to hopefully push things forward a bit. And there was a meeting on the 31st of March between the group to kind of have a discussion around the North collaborative approach, which again I'll come to, but I think that's the piece around ensuring that where there's work ongoing for the different LOIP plans in different areas, any avenues of good practice, any common themes, we're not double tasking and we're ensuring that we're all working together and effectively and efficiently. Going forward in the end, I suppose for me, the kind of key things that I take from this is there is some current challenges to support the kind of delivery of this LOIP priority. I know that myself and Angela probably, and I know the fire service don't have the capacity to kind of drive it forward in isolation. Previously, I know there was a community planning kind of officer who was able to assist, but she's working elsewhere just now. So I suppose the kind of, as is detailed at the start of this, one of the things to kind of identify from this update is what are the priorities around connected and cohesive communities? What do we want to achieve from it? Is there any other ways where we could kind of more simply, almost like mainstream some of the work that's being doing and simplify it so that this group has a simpler, more directed task for what they need to achieve, which might allow for better outcomes, I suppose. For me, again, without preempting any of the conversations, one of the key themes is about the kind of horizon scanning across Aberdeenshire to make sure that we're picking up on emerging issues. For example, I know that other areas out with the kind of 3 identified LOIP areas may be coming on to like emerging for being areas of deprivation and poverty. So this is the type of thing that we need to be ahead of, and that's where I think this group needs to be focused on. But I suppose that's it for me, and I really look forward to the discussion, I suppose. Thank you.
No, thank you very, very much, Jamie. That's a really good overview, and you've set out the challenges very well. So thank you for that. Do you have any comments or questions, please? I see and hear nothing. So I think in order, Richie.
Yeah, so it's giving the others a chance to come in first. Just to, I guess, to reiterate my earlier comments from the executives meeting. I think Jamie's kind of fairly kind of set out the landscape there, and I think it's fair to say that the breadth, the sheer volume of actions and activity that the group are dealing with isn't particularly sustainable. So again, I think there is a need to pare that back, I guess, and I am wondering if that might be one of the topics at the workshop in August. To help with that, because nobody has lots of resources at any of our disposal, I suspect, to do everything all the time. So I think there's some choices around what's the most important. And if there are areas that we can mainstream, I think Jamie should say that that's a good thing to consider. But by mainstream, that's still adding some further activity. So I think there is maybe just a bit of reality checking around what needs to come through to the board here in terms of added value and outcomes, as the chair says, alongside where there may be just some other activity that we just quite bluntly say, well, you would love to be able to do that, but we just can't at this point in time. So yeah, happy to further discussion perhaps in August around all that.
Thanks very much, and I've got Kate, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Richie. I think I would probably just kind of concur with Richie's comments around about that. I mean, I know obviously in 5.4 it speaks about the kind of insufficient staffing to do that, and in terms of resources that we all have collectively, I think we need to probably think a bit more smartly around about how we tap into existing resource rather than, I see obviously there's a potential that may have financial implication. I know certainly from my own organisation, and I dare say from all other organisations represented here, that's going to be a challenge as well. So I guess I would just welcome Richie's suggestion that it's something we take forward at the workshop that we spoke about earlier in the meeting in terms of a solution of how to take it forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I would absolutely concur with all of that. It is a very, there are a lot of actions and a lot of objectives in here, and I do think we need to focus, absolutely focus on what's going to make the biggest impact on our communities in a positive way. So there's nothing to say it can't be, a phased approach, and certainly, if you have 3 priorities, for example, I'm not saying there will only be 3, but then when one's complete, another one comes on. So it's going to have to be a living document, if you like, in terms of taking that plan forward. So absolutely concur, and it's definitely something we should look at in August. So that would be fine. I don't see or hear any other indications. So with that, then, can we turn to the recommendations? To note the review of the connected and cohesive communities LOIP priority and staffing resources required to take actions forward. And we've addressed that by saying we will review in August. To note the continued staffing constraints and future updates on the Fraserburgh Banff Macduff locality plan priorities. As that's kind of linked to the first one. To note the update on the Shaping Places for Wellbeing programme and the governance route to the CPP board. And again, I think that will come out in the workshop, because again, I think there's duplication in there. And I think the Shaping Places for Wellbeing programme has been layered on top of what was already happening, and I do think that needs to be unpicked, and to acknowledge progress being made in the Peterhead locality plan priorities. And it's a very, very comprehensive document attached to this report, which sets all of that out. So can we agree those, please? I'll take silence as an agreement. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Jamie, for stepping in to do that. It's much appreciated. And we will review all of that in August. Item 9 is our LOIP sponsors, and that's a verbal update from Richie. Now, that was touched on under the outstanding business item, but Richie, Dan's alluded to this as well. So do you want to just take us through this, please?
Yeah, I think what I suggested earlier was that, again, I think without turning the August session into a weeks-long event, that might be something, again, we have alongside that kind of focus on how we want to be as a partnership and how we might best run our business. I do like the idea of a sponsor, still regardless of what we end up as a board, kind of focusing our priorities around. And I think just for all kinds of reasons, getting more direct involvement and engagement of a sponsor on the board alongside the LOIP leads, I think would be a good thing to do. And so, yeah, I think at that point, if we are reaffirming, if you like, or not, our approach in terms of what our priorities are as a board, then we include the sponsors discussion alongside that. I still think that's a really valuable thing to do.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we will move forward, and we'll take that forward as part of the workshop. So item 10 on our agenda is Aberdeenshire Citizens Panel update, and we're being asked to note outcomes, etc. And I'll ask Kate Bond to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll just provide a very brief overview. The board will recall we've previously brought a number of papers when it came up to the retendering of the Citizens Panel. We've used the Citizens Panel, but I have to be honest, it's been a bit hit and miss over the last few years about how comprehensively it's been used. Some partners have made use of it, but it doesn't feel like it's been used from a collective partnership point of view. Having said that, we did go back out to tender to test the market to see what we could get, because we did feel at that time that there was still benefit in continuing with the Citizens Panel. Unfortunately, it was part of a wider contract split into lots. We did only have one supplier come forward to bid for the CPP lot, and it was both far in excess of our budget, and actually the quality of the bid was extremely poor, and we would not be recommending that to the board to take forward. So we kind of now are at a point where we've got a number of choices for the board to make. We could cease the Citizens Panel, but I think if we do that, we'll still need to look at what other options are there. The agencies, a number of agencies, all have different ways that we can engage, either with groups with lived experience. We've got community councils, we've got a range of ward forums. So I think there are still ways for us to be able to test and to get evidence and to get feedback from community groups, maybe in a slightly different way. Or indeed, if the board say, no, we would prefer you to go back out, I think we need to look again at what the scope of that tender is, and potentially do we have to increase the budget. So there are options for the board. It's either agree to cease and look at other ways, or indeed go back out to tender. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kate. Does anyone have any views they wish to put forward at this point? I don't see or hear anything. I think based on what you've said, Kate, and what's in our report, I would suggest to the board that we cease with the Citizens Panel, that we do not go back out, and we certainly do not go over budget, but we don't go back out, and that we look at different options going forward to use the networks that we do have. Lived experience being absolutely key to all of this. But we have focus groups, or we have forum, or we've got tenants organisations as well. So I would suggest to the board that we cease working with the citizens panel process, and that we ask officers to come back with a suggested way forward in terms of communicating and engaging with communities. Can we agree that? Don't hear anyone saying otherwise, Kate. So the recommendations ask us to note the outcome of the procurement process, which is what we've done. Consider the impact on respective organisations of the removal of panel. I don't hear or see anyone objecting to the removal of it, so we'll take it that everyone believes there is not a significant impact, and discuss and agree the future which is the recommendation at 2.3. So we've agreed to cease and ask officers to come back with alternative ways of engaging. Okay, thank you very much. And our final item on the agenda is item 11, which is the Scottish Government Place Directors Updated Role 2022. And again, can I ask Kate to present this, please?
Thank you, Chair. So previously, the Scottish Government have put in place what they called at that point location directors, who were aligned to areas, and they are and they've attached is effectively an updated role profile for a new place director that the Scottish Government are currently looking to recruit into. And we have an opportunity to shape, to influence, and to set out what we would like to see as a community planning partnership from the place director. Clearly, that their main role is to act as that bridge between the area and Scottish Government, to act as a critical friend, and they can help with that local change activity. We don't currently have a location director in place for Aberdeenshire. Obviously, if we did, they would kind of evolve into the place director. But my understanding is that Aberdeenshire, they will be looking to recruit somebody specifically for that role. So I think it's just an opportunity for us to put back feedback to the government around what role we would like to see of the place director, what benefits we could see them bringing, and if there is anything in particular that the board would wish us to highlight back to the Scottish Government at this stage. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do you have any views, any comments to offer? What would we as a partnership wish a place director to do? Certainly in my very early days of involvement with Community Planning Board, it used to be Paul Gray who ended his time in with the government in health, but Paul used to visit the board on a fairly regular basis, and certainly brought information for the board, and was very good at taking feedback from the board back to government. So just in a very basic way, that was quite a helpful liaison. As I say, my first involvement with the board, that worked quite effectively, and I think subsequent years we did have someone who came particularly around the implementation of the LOIPs initially, and helped us through that process as well. So happy to hear from other partners as to what you might like to hear, or if you don't feel able to feed back today, then please get in touch with Kate after the meeting and give some idea of what you would expect from a place director. I think openness, transparency and up-to-date information would be really helpful as far as possible. And again, I think it's really important that Aberdeenshire's place director links in with other place directors and actually works across government, all government departments, because we're kind of pigeonholed into one really. and I think it'd be really important that there's that cross-cutting relationship between different directorates of government. But anyway, Neil, you indicated, did you want to come in?
Yes, it was just a really a passing comment, really. For this paper, we're asking us to consider, comment and agree on updated role of Scottish Government Place Directors, but the previous paper we just talked about was removal of citizen panel and looking at an alternative. I would think that one of the roles could be for that director was to make sure that there is alternatives looked at within that role. You know, I think that could be quite an important role for them to look at, so that there is, you know, something there. I may be talking about a place or
No,
overlapping
not
two
at all,
different things,
not at all. Not at all, but I think the alternative to the citizens panel would be something that we would develop within Aberdeenshire. It's about, you know, connecting with our local communities, and I don't think the Scottish Government Place Director would have a role in that. To be honest, Neil, I think it would be developed at a local level, and as far down as we can go in terms of that interaction with communities. This is a more strategic kind of role for the liaison, or the place director, which would help and support the partnership here to I suppose maximise opportunities in terms of Scottish Government, to feed back any barriers or any difficulties that partners might see in the being able to fulfil their roles and that kind of thing. So it's more a support for us. And Kate said critical friend, but more, you know, they would observe the meeting, they would maybe comment on how we interacted, and, you know, the sort of topics we covered and things like that, and be a kind of liaison person, if you like, in terms of, like, if Susan had something that was particularly been particularly difficult to deal with in health, then they could go back to their colleagues in the health directorate and maybe see if they can find a solution. It's that kind of role they would have. I've got Glenn, then Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for giving me that. It's a wee bit more enlightenment as what the role is. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. I think that I certainly agree with what you were saying there towards the end. I mean, that bridge is obviously going to be useful, but I think going back to something that you said earlier, I also see this role crucially as this person would be in a position to provide us information in terms of that person's colleagues working elsewhere, and in terms of best practice. And I think that's always useful. And, you know, there will be information that might otherwise pass us by, not always, but sometimes. So I think it's sort of reaching out in terms, as you say, it's always tricky if you've got a sort of not necessarily a blank piece of paper, but it's like, I'd want to ask the question about how they see how they can help us. But one of the areas I think definitely is to give advice and information regarding best practice, not least regarding some of the issues that we've mentioned and will be raised at the workshop. Thanks.
Absolutely, that's absolutely right. And Mark, please, and then we'll move on.
You know, thanks, Chair. It's just a question, really. You're on about a place director from the Scottish Government, but what is in place now through the Scottish Government as far as who we would go to as far as dealing with the sphere of governance, which is Scottish Government, and this linkage? There surely must be something there now. I mean, I'm newbie into this board, so I wouldn't want to see duplication of effort, but if this is making a better role there, I see Richie jumping in right now, so I'll wish.
No, not at all, Mark. It's in terms of the CPP, there's nothing in place at the minute, but there are through our individual organisations kind of clear connections around our kind of, I guess, professional networks. So I guess that would be, I think it's a very fair question about clarity around. So what would be the added value in this kind of case? So we wouldn't want to duplicate, as you say, but I think this would be around about the community planning partnership and a board, and how we can be assured, I guess, we're joined up with government, and indeed government is joined up in terms of what we consider to be our local priorities. So yeah, in terms of CPP, nothing directly, but exactly how that might work, we've got a degree of influence as to how to shape that, again, alongside the place director when they're appointed.
Okay, Mark. Yep. Okay.
Yes, sorry, thank you. Nodding head.
No, that's right. Thanks. So, Kate, do you have enough there to work with? I think we should welcome it. And again, it's something that could potentially help us to move forward on a number of fronts. Okay, so with that, the recommendation is to consider comment on and agree to the updated role and network of Scottish Government Placed Directors. So we have done that, and that brings us to the end of the agenda. We've slightly overrun, but I think we've had some really, really good conversations today, and I would like to thank each and every one of you for your attendance and participation, and I look forward to working with you, as I said earlier, going forward. But I think we look forward to setting a date for the workshop, and we can have a look at the way we want to work going forward and shape our priorities to be a bit more manageable, probably, but more effective as well, so that we're concentrating and focused on specifics, and that we can have clear objectives and clear outcomes evidenced. So I just want to thank you all very much, and thank you all to all the officers who presented today. Huge amount of work going on, and each and every one of your organisations. So please take our thanks back to all your staff and all your colleagues for everything that they're doing to contribute to all of this. So thank you all very much indeed. And our next meeting is the 7th of September, but we will send out information about the workshop as soon as we possibly can. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you.